as he brings us a word for Vision Sunday.
All right, well, hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome. So glad to have everyone together again. To all of our friends live here at the City House, to our church family attending online. Man, so much information that we want to communicate with you, and we're just going to dive right in to our Vision Sunday. And so before we really even get started, there's a lot of amazing things that we're going to celebrate today. And really, one of the biggest is that today officially marks the beginning of our brand new season of Kingdom Builders. Is there anyone excited about that this morning? Love Kingdom Builders, and for those of you, you could have gotten a copy when you walked in if you would like one of these, kind of like our Sears catalog of generosity. These are going to be available at the welcome desk after service, so please take advantage. And as always, this catalog lives on our website, cotfc.com. You just click on the Kingdom Builders tab there, and you can see. And so we've got a lot of amazing opportunities this year. We are setting a goal in 2024 to raise $150,000. Last year, you guys blew me away. We had the largest gift towards Kingdom Builders. You gave over $130,000 in the year of 2023, which can we just take a moment and thank God for that? Phenomenal. And so we're hoping like maybe this is the year that we can hit that 150 marker, and we want to invest in kingdom needs, and future leaders and church plants, global needs, and local needs. And we've got all different kinds of local church plants that we want to continue to pour into. I want to go back for 1 second. And part of that is going to be youth camp again. We believe that that camp is such a formative experience in the life of our children and our youth students. And so we want to thank you for being generous. And we have in the past been able to greatly subsidize, for some kids even fully sponsor, because you gave. We don't believe money should ever be a reason why a kid can't go to camp. And so much of that is funded through Kingdom Builders. We've got some really fun, like global goals that we're trying to hit this year. We want to continue to build homes in Nicaragua. We want to give to disaster relief through Convoy of Hope. We actually want to increase the amount of investment for a family that came out of our church several years ago, JT and Anna Farr. They're doing phenomenal work globally through their nonprofit Mission 91. We want to continue to support one of our missionaries in Haiti. And we've got a lot of local stuff. As we just saw in church news, we want to come alongside of the heroes in our church that foster and adopt kids. I believe, the Bible is pretty clear, like pure and lasting religion in the sight of God our Father is caring for the widow and the orphan in their trouble. So like there's nothing more pleasing in the sight of God than caring for those who will bravely take up the mantle of fostering and adopting. And so we want to invest more intentional resources to serve you. We have a new partnership which we're really excited about this year called Anchor Her. We're going to be hosting 4 events of the ministry Anchor Her here at the City House. But this is a ministry that partners with women that have been impacted by incarceration, domestic violence, and addiction. And then we have a slew of just other projects. And so if you're unfamiliar with Kingdom Builders, like Kingdom Builders, every dollar that we give goes through Kingdom Builders. It is the generosity ministry of the church. And so this community care, $25,000, that's for every utility assistance, every tangible need, everyone that we can meet individually, and then all of this slew of other amazing, like-minded ministry local partners. And so, man, I just want to call on all of you Kingdom Builders this morning, all of you, that you will live counterculturally when it comes to your relationship with money, that you will give sacrificially over and above the tithe. That like What would it look like for us to trust God more, to believe that we are gifted to give? And we were able to meet so many needs in 2023, but how many want to see even more needs met in 2024? And I know that my hand is up. And so, once again, you all are amazing. Thank you for being so incredibly generous in the past. So, as we get started this morning, on this Vision Sunday, I want to quickly remind us of how we got to where we are today. So it's hard to believe that it was 4 years ago almost that we walked through one of the most difficult seasons of our individual lives and then our corporate life as a church. That we experienced simultaneously a social crisis, a financial crisis, a health crisis, a political crisis, all at once. And it's crazy to think, like, 4 years ago, we also saw the Chiefs and the 49ers play in the Super Bowl. We also saw Donald Trump and Joe Biden battling together for presidency. And so it's like, oh, dear Lord, please, like, we don't need everything to repeat every 4 years. So, but it was just like, here we are again. And it was during that time, it would be brutal. We would see 2/3 of our church disappear, which would equate to about 700 or 800 people. We would see 9 of our 13 staff turn over in an 18-month period. And if I'm being honest, it felt like the future of our church was very uncertain. So it was a very painful time, a very divisive time, a very confusing time. But it would be during that time we begin to ask some really important questions as a leadership team and as a staff. Specifically, if we could do it all over again, if we could replant the church from scratch, because it kind of feels like we're at scratch right now, what would we do different? What kind of changes would we make? And there was 2 answers that would emerge from that question that would prove to be incredibly formative to the church that we have become today. The first answer, the thing that we would change, is that we would get really serious about planting churches. That we had talked about church planting, we had written some checks to church plants, we had tried once, but like it was time to get really serious and committed to our church planting efforts. And the second conclusion we came to is that we would go all in on discipleship. Because we had known at that point what it was like to grow a crowd, and now we had also known what it was like for a crowd to disappear overnight. That we couldn't just give our life to building a large gathering. We needed to give our life to something better, our energy to something better, something more in line with the heart of Jesus, that we would now go all in on making disciples. And so I want to just quickly talk about the first, our church planting, and what we've been doing, and then we're going to end our time together talking more about discipleship. And so if you're newer here, it's important for you to understand that we're really passionate about planting churches. And if you're curious why that is, because statistically the average church doesn't talk about planting churches, doesn't invest, and doesn't send to plant churches. The reason why for us this is a really big deal, it's very simple. Because the data and the research come back the same every single year, that church planting is the number one most effective evangelical tool on the planet. Meaning this, that if you really want to see people far from God get reached with the gospel, there is no better way to do it quickly and en masse than planting more churches. New church plants will reach more lost people than anything else in the world. And so we need an exponential amount of new church plants. And there's 3 different ways that we plant churches here at Church of the Four Corners. The first way is through our church planting group called New Thing. And New Thing is awesome because you remember when you're a kid and you're just like playing in the sandbox with other kids? And like somehow as kids, like we don't learn discrimination. We're not born with discrimination. We learn it, right? We aren't innately born with this like hatred towards people who are different than us. We learn those things. Because kids, they just play together in the sandbox. They don't care. They're kids. They're having the time of their life. New Thing is a giant kingdom sandbox where you see all of these different churches with different backgrounds and different denominations coming together, and we, get this, actually like each other. We're friends, but like in real life. We choose to hang out with each other. We trust each other. We like each other. And even though we come from different backgrounds, have different convictions, and even some of those secondary beliefs are differently, we are friends on mission together. New Thing started in Kansas City 11 years ago. And at the time, we had 3 churches. Fast forward to today, we have 47 churches that meet over 4 networks across the Kansas City metro area, and over 100 micro churches represented in New Thing. It has been a move of God over the last decade. And because of your generous giving through Kingdom Builders, every single year, and we have done this now for, I would guess, at least the last 7 or 8 years, we've invested $5,000 a year. And all of that money stays here in Kansas City towards planting new churches. In fact, every single local church in our Kingdom Builders catalog is a New Thing church. So this is the first way that we participate in church planting. The second way that we plant churches is through Brandon and Courtney Kelly. So these 2 guys, they lead the East Kansas City Underground Hub. 2 years ago, even, to our knowledge, there was not a single micro-church hub in the city of Independence, or for that matter, in eastern Jackson County. And over the last couple of years, and once again, through your generous Kingdom Builders giving, we've been able to provide a partial salary for these 2, going on what is now the 3rd year. Over the last couple years, they've taken over 100 people through the missionary pathway, which is just teaching people how to live as missionaries in their context, how to plant the gospel effectively. In that time, we have seen the first emergence of a micro-church hub in the eastern Jackson County area. And these guys have seen over 14 spiritual families, aka micro churches, planted in just a few years. It's been extraordinary to see how God is working in and through them. So this is the second way that we participate in church planting. The third way that we plant churches is by, you won't believe this, actually planting churches. We were able to plant our first church last year with Alex's sons, called Rock Island, just planted about 7 minutes from here in Raytona Beach, Missouri. So proud of those guys, love those guys, they're killing it. And now we are beginning work on our second church plant. And so it gets me a lot of just excitement to announce that as of January 1st, we have some new leadership residents. Put your hands together for Andrew and Bailey Daniels. They're going to make their way up on the stage. And we're incredibly excited about this. You may be curious, like, what does it mean to be a leadership resident? And essentially for us, it means this. A leadership resident is, in this situation, these guys have discerned a call of church planting on their life. And they're trying to figure out what that looks like and what that means. And so we've talked multiple times, and we've determined that we're going to take the year of 2024 and enter into a season of discernment. And we believe there's one of 3 potential outcomes that will happen at the end of this journey. Outcome number 1 is something known as like a business as mission strategy. So these guys feel very intrigued by this idea of starting a cafe, which this might sound weird to you, but it's actually becoming more and more common as we see in church plants that we're working with. Starting a cafe and using that as like a relational hub in the community, and from there, starting to do more micro church planting, and then eventually a macro or larger church forms. So that's like option one. Option two could be something where, because there's like like about 400,000 churches in America. And a lot of these churches are either stagnant or dying. And so what some planners are doing is they're coming in and they're revitalizing their church. Sometimes that church will die and then it will be replanted. This is called a replant strategy. So that's option two that we're exploring. And then there's option three. And option three is that we discern through this process that maybe it's not an apostolic call, but some other form of church leadership. And I don't know, maybe there's like an option four, like Andrew pursues his male modeling career. I don't know. There's always an option four. But we think that those are the three most likely outcomes. And so I wanted Andrew just to take a moment and just talk about his heart behind the residency.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. So this is a really exciting time for us, and part of the reason why is because of kind of our story. It's kind of crazy and like also not the easiest to like exactly describe, but we got married going on 10 years. We're going to have our 10-year anniversary this year, and we got married. We were 22. We're both college dropouts, and we just had this moment of like, what are we doing? Like, we got married, cool, now, like, what's next? And we had no idea. And both of us kind of felt individually and, like, together, like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, we want to know, like, what is our life's calling? We don't really fully understand. And we started praying together, and it was shortly after that I started feeling that there was a call of ministry on my life to actually work in ministry. And that's kind of what I've been pursuing ever since then. But there's been some twists and turns, and there's been times that maybe you guys can relate to. You thought that the plan was supposed to look a certain way, and then you found out that's not what happened. And so you maybe go through a season where you're like, oh, maybe I was wrong about God's calling on my life. And what I found out was I wasn't wrong. I just assumed I knew what it was supposed to look like, and I'm not qualified to make those decisions. And so all that to say, we started coming to Church of the Four Corners in 2019. It was the first time that we were exposed to this idea of like church planting, and we never really considered it. We started praying, and then a little over a year ago, we kind of had this really interesting experience where, I felt like God was working on something individually with me, but I was too scared to say it out loud to my wife. And then one day, a couple months later, she comes to me, and she's like, hey, I feel like God has been putting this on my heart. And it turns out he was putting the same thing on each of our hearts individually. It was just this cool God moment where we're like, oh, okay, cool. God didn't give up on us. He does have this plan, and there's a destination, even if we don't know exactly what it looks like. And so we're at a place right now where we know that we're called to lead. We know that we're called to probably lead a church. And if you ask us privately, we probably have all the details of what we think it's going to look like, but we also feel very clearly that God is telling us that this is a time of preparation. And so we are perfectly content in that moment. I think the biggest life lesson that I've learned is that God, the steps of a righteous man are ordered by the Lord, right? He doesn't give you it all at once. He doesn't give you a destination and tell you, hey, this is how you get there. He usually gives you one step at a time. And so we are more than content and happy with this current step of of discerning of, hey, God, this is what we think that we're called to do. Tell us if we're right. Tell us if we're wrong, and just show us the next step. So we're really, really excited to see what he does next.
That's awesome. And so as I mentioned earlier, option number one of what these guys were dreaming about is to maybe start up a cafe, and then from there, use that cafe to start planting churches. And it's just funny, you follow the Lord long enough, you stop believing in coincidences, and then you begin to understand, even though it's a cliche, it's still true that God's timing is absolutely perfect. And these guys came to us, and they started talking about these dreams that God had been placing on their heart. Well, it just so happened, if you don't know this already, I also have an exciting announcement to make. And Andrew, I need you to back away from the screen for dramatic effect. Thank you. That the church recently without actually using a dollar of tithe money or kingdom builders money, was able to purchase a cafe recently, the Joy Coffee that used to be open in the City House. And I am pleased to announce that starting in late spring, we're going to be opening up the City Table here at the City House. There it is. All right, you can now come back. We had our moment. And so it's pretty neat that we began to think, well, oh, Lord, is this what you're doing? Like, we have this new opportunity, and now you've called these guys that want to plant church through something like this. Why don't we have Bailey be a part of this? What a great way to enter into the discernment process is by actually doing the work. And so for those of you who don't know, we actually stole Jeremy, our disciple-making pastor, out of the restaurant industry. So he has a lot of expertise and success in that field. So Jeremy's going to be overseeing kind of 30,000 foot of what this cafe will look like, but Bailey will be the manager at the City Table. So Bailey, take us a moment and just tell us about the new cafe opening up soon.
Yeah, so I'm super excited about the City Table. Jeremy's great. Let me just say how wonderful Jeremy is. He has been such a help. We've been working just like so hard to get this up and running. We're really excited for what it's going to be. As you could see, good food, good mood. That's our motto. We're really excited. We're going to serve high quality food and high quality coffee. And we're just really excited to be a space for our neighbors to come in and feel like they're at home, feel safe, feel seen. Everything that we do when you walk in the door is an intentional, way to greet you and meet you. We're so excited to serve our community and to collaborate and partner with our neighbors, and just the best way to reach our city and just be the spot for you to come and hang out. And we're just really excited for what that's all going to bring.
Well, give it up for these guys one more time. Hey, I'm excited to begin this journey with y'all. It's going to be amazing. So maybe you're here, and if I could just quickly perhaps address the elephant in the room. Maybe some of you are like, listen, I just don't get it. Okay, why we got to do all this stuff? Why can't we just be a church that does church stuff? Why we got to be opening up cafes and co-working spaces and all this silliness? Let's just focus on the main thing. And I think those are actually all very legitimate questions. Very legitimate. But the best answer that I possibly know to that question of why we do ministry the way that we do ministry, outside of just the obvious, we feel called to do it this way, the best answer I know is actually through the story of a guy by the name of Chris Renshaw. Some of you may know Chris, some of you may not. He's on the right here. He's with his family. So Chris used to be a believer, used to walk with the Lord, and then, like so many others, he fell away from faith. And I believe that he had been in this apostate, kind of running state for about 15 years, had given up on faith. And then one day, a church in his neighborhood opened up a cafe. So he walked through the doors. Apprehensive to walk through a church, no doubt, but they looked cool, and the coffee was good. So he hung out, and he kept coming back, and it became his local shop. And then he began to build relationships with some of the employees. He began to build relationships with some of those that were on staff with us, and conversations were started that eventually led to meaningful conversations, that over time led to spiritual conversations, until one day in that lobby, Chris Renshaw and Alex Sons began to have a spiritual conversation, and he encountered the presence of God, and it had a transformative experience right outside those doors. Something changed in him. And so he started attending Church of the Four Corners. And he began to bring people with him. He brought his wife and his father-in-law and his nephew, and their entire family began to re-engage faith in a different and unique way. And he began to go through crash course and find your place. And he began to understand that his time in the hospitality industry, all those years, yes, he was running, but God was redeeming it. And God still had a plan and a purpose for his life. And so he began to serve and he began to use his gifts. And then we began to talk about planting churches. And he and Alex already had this meaningful bond. And so when we sent Rock Island Church out to Raytown, he felt the Lord was telling him to go and to be just a strong support for Alex. He would have no idea at the time what that eventually would mean for him, is that he is, as of today, this Sunday, preaching a sermon at Rock Island Church because he's one of their new pastors. That's freaking ridiculous. You can't make that up. That just because a church decided to try to do ministry a little different, to try to open up their facility, way more complex, way harder, but it's messy. And we've stumbled, and it's been imperfect how we've executed it. But yet, lives are being changed. His life, and then everyone's life around Chris's is being changed because there was just a church that decided to open up their space and love their community. And so, should every church do this? Man, I hope not. I wouldn't put that on them. But it's worth it. And so we're praying and we're believing for a lot more Chris Renshaws. We're praying and believing for a lot more people who will come. Maybe they would never step foot into this church, because I know Chris would have said no to a church invitation, but they'll come and they'll eat food. They'll come and they'll drink coffee. They'll come and they'll allow themselves to meet some people who will be willing to love them and show them Jesus. Does anyone else get excited about that, or am I the only one? Is that awesome? Cool. All right, so as you can tell, we've got a lot going on with church planting. We're doing a lot of stuff, and I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud that as a church, we are living out one of our cultural values, is that we will build castles, but we're going to bleed kingdom. It would be Jesus that would say in Matthew chapter 6, seek first the kingdom. And that is always our philosophy. That we will put the greater kingdom work of our city, of our nation, and the globe always above the individual work of this castle. So we're going to build castles, but we're going to bleed the kingdom. And so we do that through church planting, and God has been so kind and so good, and he's shown us so much favor. So let's just talk for a moment now about discipleship and what that means for us as a church. Because if in the New Testament we see the word Christian 3 times, but we see the word disciple 260 times, the message to me seems pretty clear that Jesus isn't interested in just accumulating more Christians, but he is very much in the business of making disciples. But here's the hard part about discipleship, is that no one can really agree on what that means. It would be awesome if the Bible just came out and said, a disciple is blank, but it doesn't really do that explicitly. And so there was work to do, and we had to get together, and we had to formulate our own definition of discipleship. And hopefully you've heard me or someone else say this 100 times. But for us, discipleship is twofold. Discipleship is 2 sides of the same coin. Discipleship is equally who you are becoming and what you are doing. Discipleship is becoming like Jesus and living out the mission of Jesus. And so we define it as you have to cultivate your Christ-like character. A disciple is someone who looks like Jesus, who talks like Jesus, loves like Jesus. What a gift Jesus was. That we don't have to wonder, I wonder what God's like. What an ethereal question. No, we can know through Jesus. And we can be empowered through the Spirit, through the fruits of the Spirit, to be more loving, joyous, kind, peaceful, patient, and above. So the goal is to change who we are, to become more like him. One less layer of Craig and one more layer closer to Jesus. But also to capture your God-given calling. I love what Andrew said, like, man, we tried something, it didn't work out, so I felt I missed it. No, the calling on your life doesn't change. Maybe the interpretation is wrong. Maybe we mess up because of sin and our own insecurities and brokenness. But God has put a masterpiece mission over every one of his kids. We believe that. The Ephesians 2:10, for we're his masterpiece. We are his best work, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which he prepared in advance for us to do. So each and every one of us has a unique mission on our lives, and we need to discern what that mission is. And we've worked really hard to create different experiences at the church where we can help our church collectively grow, to cultivate their Christ-like character and capture their God-given calling. Just to quickly go through a few. We have Crash Course. Crash Course is our weekly experience. It's all around understanding how each and every person is created for intimacy and influence. And we connect that to character and calling. Since making that shift, we have seen 268 people go through our Crash Course. We implemented Find Your Place, which is a deep dive. It's a month long into the GPS to understanding your spiritual gifts, your passions, and your story, and how God weaves them perfectly and redemptively together to discern your masterpiece mission. Since the beginning of this process, we have seen 211 people go through Find Your Place. We started Followers Made, which was a 6-month discipleship process. And in it, you begin to learn and develop all of these habits, because it's not just about knowing more stuff. It's habits that change our lives. It's habits that lead to outcomes. So in Followers Made, you learn the habit of Bible reading, prayer, hearing the voice of the Lord, journaling, accountability relationships. In this, we unlock the beauty of grace. In this, we wrestle with the tension of holiness. Since offering Followers Made, we've had 292 people in our church graduate this experience. We offered Leaders Made. And this is like this on steroids. It's a year long, and you read through most of the Bible. And it's hard, and it's grueling. And in this, we learn about incarnational living. We study spiritual leadership. And we even study systematic theology. And we have had 20 brave men and women complete this program a year long. I'm super excited because right now we are almost done piloting our very first ever Missionaries Made group. And Missionaries Made is all about taking disciples and making them into everyday missionaries where they live, work, learn, and play. And we have 12 gals that are about to complete this process, and the feedback has been extraordinary. Not only that, there's a couple exciting things that we have coming this fall. So starting this fall, we're going to begin a new discipleship experience called Rooted. And Rooted is fascinating because what it does is it helps those who go through it develop the 7 spiritual rhythms of those who were a part of the earliest church, all the way back in Acts chapter 2. That through this you begin to learn the rhythm of daily devotion, prayer, breaking strongholds, sacrificial generosity, community service, sharing your story, and worship. And at the end, it kind of leads to those who are yet to be baptized, to giving them the boldness to sharing their faith. What I'm so excited about is after we've implemented Rooted, we will now have a weekly crash course, monthly Find Your Place, quarterly Rooted, semi-annual Followers Made, and annual Leaders Made discipleship experience. That there will be a next step for every single person who wants to grow in their character and their calling. Something else that I'm really excited about is, so we've been listening, we've been asking questions. And a lot of the feedback that we've received from people in our church is that, hey, we love the discipleship stuff. It's been super effective. It's given me all these different tools and habits. I now have a prayer life. I now read my Bible more than ever. I now understand like all of these amazing things. And the feedback we've received is what we really want is we just want ongoing fellowship. We just want friendships. And so one of our goals this fall is that we want to launch 10 to 15 city homes all throughout the geographic KC metro area. 10 to 15 homes that don't operate on a semester system, that people will be willing to get together, to eat together, to be in the Word together, and then just develop deep community with one another. So this is the feedback we've received, and so here's what that means. We need 10 to 15 people who will open up their homes. Because that's work. And that's a sacrifice. And we need people who will be willing to engage in this community. So like, a lot of stuff, y'all. Like a lot of things going on. We've got a lot to celebrate. We've done a lot of work. We've seen a lot of you engage the process, and I hope that your lives have been impacted and changed. I hope you've seen your character cultivated. I hope you've seen your calling captured. But here's the big idea of what I need us to understand today, is that we could do a million things. We could offer 1 million programs. We could plant 100 churches, but none of it matters if we don't make one disciple. None of it matters if we don't see, because this is all 30,000 feet. What matters is actually at ground level, one person choosing to follow Jesus to live fully alive. One person who understands that God, even though I have made terrible decisions, that God's love is for me and that grace is real. One person who understands that my past does not disqualify me from a redemptive future. One person who understands that God can heal them through community. One person who understands that we serve a God that specializes in resurrection, and he is a God who always writes redemption stories. And I want to share one of those redemption stories with you this morning. Check out Dana's story.
So my name is Dana Hernandez. I've been with the church going on 2 years now. Life is tough. At the age of 6 years old, experienced drugs for the first time. Mother actually was experiencing substance abuse. My uncle that was around was selling, using drugs. In fact, he was the first one that actually gave me weed from the beginning, marijuana from the beginning, then began drinking, and then began smoking cigarettes. But what went on around that also was a lot of abuse, from physical to sexual abuse. I was broken from day one. From day one, even born into this thing, I was broken and lost. But all throughout my life, there was always some type of method that God was trying to reach my heart. In 2012, I'm facing lots of time. I'm in the holding cell, knowing that, at this point, it didn't matter how much time I was going to do. What I did know is I didn't want to do it alone. And I just got down and I said, Lord, no matter what happens, I need you. It was released January 11th in 2015, January 12th at 4 a.m. I was at work making some good money, did really well. But at this point, I was just kind of going through the motions. I stopped attending service. I just worked, and I started putting Christ on the back burner. And then what came about with that was I just started drinking again. And I crashed. I lost everything at that point. I ended up back in prison, but I was just so lost and just on the wayside so much because I just wasn't following him. I remembered all the principles. I remembered what I needed to do, but the problem was that addiction had me so tough because I thought that was the relief, that was the answer, and it was such a lie. I wanted to go to church. I was sitting at the Clarion Motel down the street, seen this one, and I said, yeah, well, I'm gonna walk up here. So I did. A week or so later, Jeremy gives me a call. He pretty much just gave it to me, he shot it to me straight. I needed to get my stuff together. And I was like, that's my guy. That's the guy I need to be around. Now I almost got 2 years clean. been at the church 2 years. I found a home here. I've been accepted. I've been loved on. I've been helped. I've been encouraged, and that's what the body's all about. Is just embracing each other as we cooperate with Him, with the Spirit, and we work with one another to see each other grow and love one another, and then actually let that go outside of the body to bring other people into the body. That's just a miracle all in itself. Now there's opportunity to help other people grow that go through some of the same circumstances and same situations that I have, some of the same struggles. So over a course of time, a young gentleman popped into the church who's here working with the children now, Mr. Samori. We had a conversation about starting a group. And he said, man, I really want to start a recovery group. And we sat down, we talked about it. And I met Shiloh prior to this, months, probably a year before. And we talked about it. I think it was on the hearts and minds of a few of us. And we just want to see people grow. Gives us a space for men and women to be vulnerable with one another and to be honest about what they're struggling with. It doesn't necessarily have to be completely focused on substance abuse. It doesn't necessarily have to focus on abuse as a whole. It could just be a challenge that you're facing, because we all face challenges. And for us to encourage one another through the foundations of Scripture is how we're all going to grow. And that's when it comes to discipleship. And that's when it comes to edification. And that's how the kingdom is going to be grown, so we can be sent out and bring more people into the fold. And like I said, it's not limited to just people that struggle with substance abuse, that struggle with abuse as a whole, but just struggle with being us as people. Us as people have problems and challenges. We're not perfect. Our perfection is totally positioned in Jesus. But if we can just walk with one another, we're all going to be better off.
So that's why we started the church. We're going to be starting a group. I believe they're calling it Circle of Hope. For people, in his words, who just kind of struggle being us sometimes. The group will be led by 3 men, one of whom is a recovering alcoholic, now substance abuse counselor. One who's formerly incarcerated, formerly abused, now sober, fighting for his freedom and his calling. Another that experienced severe abuse as a child that now loves and serves our kids. We serve a God of redemption. We serve a God of healing. We serve a God that can take any story, regardless of how broken, how seemingly hopeless, how lost, regardless of how dark, and He can meet us in our lowest place. He can love us, heal us, restore us, pick us back up on our feet, and use the very thing that the enemy intended to ruin our life as our superpower and our strength. And that's what we're seeing through this group. This is why we started the church, for people who struggle just to be us sometimes. And our church will be different. It's not going to look like any other church. It's going to be messy, and we're going to make lots of mistakes. But as long as there's stories like Dana's and Chris Renshaw's, I'll do this for the rest of my life. And I want to thank you for every single person that have served behind the scenes. You've showed up early, you've stayed late, you've made sacrifices. So stories like that don't just happen because Craig holds a microphone or Jordan sings a song or Jeremy does the things that Jeremy does and children's and all of the, no. It happens because hundreds of people show up and use their gifts to serve, to sacrifice, and to make a difference. God, we thank you. We thank you, Lord, that you are helping the people of this church follow Jesus to live fully alive. I thank you, God, for Dana and his story, his courage, that he is living in a fully alive life right now. And the enemy hates that, and the enemy wants to come against him. But Lord, I pray that you would use this group to just help so many others find freedom, to find wholeness, to find healing, God, for anyone who just struggles sometimes to be us. Lord, I pray that more stories, would you bring us more people who are lost, more people who are angry, more people who are broken, more people who have lost hope, and I pray that we would serve them well, that we would make you proud. And you wouldn't send them here because we're special or we're better than anyone else, but you would send them here because we're willing and we understand that on our own we're a wreck. And we will lean on you for strength, lean on you for guidance, lean on you for vision. Father, thank you for using people like us to do anything extraordinary. It's truly a gift. We thank you for every life that's been changed. And Lord, we pray for hundreds and if not thousands more. More stories of healing, more stories of restoration, and more stories of hope. And I promise you this, we will never take credit for any of it. We will give you all of the credit. We will give you all of the glory. We will give you all of the worship. We will give you all of the praise. The only reason, Dana said it, the only reason we are seen as righteous and perfect in your eyes is because of the position of Jesus Christ. And it's because of Jesus in his perfect, awesome, and powerful name we are here today. And everyone said,